Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deep Dive, Emerald City Hockey Seattle Kraken podcast. RJ, the cycle for the Kraken continues. They lost a bunch, things were bad, everybody became doomers. Now riding a 2-game win streak, things are looking up and everybody's excited and we're all feeling good.
Yeah, that's how the season's gone. That's been the story. I feel like we've tried to stay a little more even keel, just kind of knowing these cycles are coming at this point. I think by now you could kind of learn, but hey, they're on the upswing part of it. That's fun.
Yeah, we'll talk about the cycle a little bit later. And for once, not just what they're trying to do in the offensive zone, the cycle.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I think I finally figured it out. What it is, the inconsistency and what's driving the inconsistency, and we can officially like label what's causing the cycle to happen and how it's working. So that's
interesting.
Yeah, so that's
Well,
what,
I'm
what
sure
we're gonna do later.
I'm sure our 5 remaining listeners after your cycle joke will be very pleased to hear what it is.
They will, gotta weed out all the casuals for the handful of diehards. That's what you always want to do when you're a media company. That's how it works, right? All right, so we'll talk about that, of course, talk about Bobby McMann and the big impact he's having on the Seattle Kraken through the 2 games that he's played with the team on a very sustainable pace. We'll say, with the production there, but there's definitely good things, so looking forward to that discussion. But of course, first we got to thank our wonderful sponsor for the podcast, the law offices of Rico Tessendor, for sponsoring the podcast. RJ had some snow here in March. That very normal thing that happens in Seattle. And the first thing I thought of when I realized, oh no, I have to drive somewhere today, is it will be my first time driving in snow. And, I hope things aren't too bad. And things weren't too bad. Despite having the snow, the roads weren't too slick or anything like that. But it is another reminder that you never know what's going to happen out there. Like waking up on a almost mid-March day and seeing snow outside your window in the city of Seattle. And when those unexpected things happen, Rico's got your back.
Yeah, so if this is a repeat of year 2 for the Kraken, it's early May. The Kraken are in the second round of the playoffs, and you just find yourself in a surprise snowstorm in the middle of Seattle. And accidents certainly happen in those situations. You know exactly who to call. Now, Dylan, the first time I drove in the snow was also up here in Seattle. It was in December a couple of years ago. It was like Russell Wilson's last season in Seattle. I remember that because I dared to try and drive to the Seahawks game that day. It was Seahawks Bears in the snow. And oh my God, I was terrified. Did not have the right kind of tires for it. Was sliding all over the road. And this was before Rico had reached out to us. We didn't know who Rico was at that point. I wish I had that in the back of my mind, because that was a terrifying experience.
Yeah, I remember when you texted me about that, actually, and I could tell through the text exactly how you were feeling. You were just so like kind of low-key freaked out that little bit away. And I remember because you were still in Queen Anne at the time, and you got stuck trying to go up a hill. You couldn't get
I couldn't get my car up the hill to get to my apartment. I tried going halfway up and it would slide back down.
Yep. And so I remembered that, and I specifically took a route to avoid all hills when I had to run my one errand out during the snow. So presumably not as bad as snow as what you had to deal with back then.
No, that was a lot more snow.
Yeah. But it was my first time seeing falling snow, so that was fun. As I look out the window at the rain, I miss the snow. The snow looked better than the rain, not gonna lie.
I'll give you that for sure.
But yes, while we hope none of you ever need his services, the odds say that at some point someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you call Rico at 425-778-9800 or visit his website, ricotessendor.com, to schedule a free consultation. He's won millions of dollars for his clients and helped thousands of people in the greater Seattle area. And as a fellow member of the ECH community, we know he'll help you too. RJ, before we get to Bobby McMann here in a second, got one other quick little announcement here to make.
That's right. So this week, actually, it's in a couple days.
2 days.
We have 2 days. It comes up so fast. on Thursday the 19th, 5 p.m., we have our Kraken watch party. It's our next one of the year here. I got the graphic up for it on the YouTube version. Thursday, March 19th, 5 p.m., Kraken at Nashville Predators, trying to get some revenge for that last game against Nashville that went a little sideways. But it's at Queen Anne Beer Hall, so it's the Queen Anne location, or the last one we had at the Moss Bay Hall location. Going to be a really fun time. We got Kraken bingo again. We've got raffles for prizes at intermission, all the usual stuff, plus a fun game that Chuck came up with that we're going to give a try there. I don't even think you know about this, Dylan. In addition to the bingo, so that's going to be fun. I'll leave it a surprise what it is.
Okay.
But it's going to be a great time for our watch party there on the 19th, and then quick announcement for our final watch party of the season. It was April 6th. It is now April 7th. Had to change it because the March Madness final turned out to be April 6th. So makes sense to change that one. It is April 7th for the game at Minnesota, and that is going to be at Moss Bay Hall, our final watch party of the year on the east side. So east side people, come and check it out. And we've got some exciting things in the works. Unfortunately, can't share the details yet, but we got some really, really fun things in the works. Hopefully we'll be able to share pretty soon for that final one.
Yeah, definitely some big deal stuff if it all comes together. So looking forward to all the watch parties as always, and definitely excited to see people this Thursday at Queen Anne Beer Hall for that game against Nashville, as we try to get some revenge on the Predators for that home loss. See how they do. We'll see how they do. One guy that they did not have that last game against Nashville that I think would have helped make a difference, RJ, certainly if these last two games are any indication, is Bobby McMann, who has, finally got cleared through the visa process, the immigration process, made his debut up in Vancouver with the Seattle Kraken, immediately made his presence felt through not just that game, but also then their home game against Florida. 3 goals, 5 points through 2 games, played on that top line with Matty Beniers and Jordan Eberle. Bobby McMann, best trade in Seattle Kraken history, RJ?
Well, through the first 2 games, I think you have to absolutely say yes. I think we'll probably want to give it a longer sample size before we ultimately crown it as the best trade the Kraken have ever made. But so far, so very good for Bobby McMann. I've 2 goals, 5 points in the 2 games with the Kraken. And I think you're seeing exactly what it is that he brings, in these last couple games, whether it's the speed, the willingness to go net front. He has been as advertised, and his line mates have done a really good job getting him the puck in those areas and kind of working with him. I really like Lane Lambert's decision to put Bobby McMann on the first line also. Just put him in a position to succeed. That's what you want to do with any new player, to kind of get him worked into the lineup, put him in a spot where things are going to be made a little easier for them. And playing with Matty Beniers and Jordan Eberle, it's a great spot. Heck, they're used to having someone that sounds pretty similar of a last name right there. It looks pretty similar on the lineup sheet. So just nice seamless transition.
I was gonna say, do you think they really noticed when Lane first did the lineup sheet, and then they were like, wait a second? They did. By the way, the lineup sheets are always numbers based, not name based. So yeah, they did probably notice. But
I'm so glad he's not number 18 or something.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? Yeah, we had originally talked about where would he slot in the lineup last week when we did the deep dive, and we had talked about him filling in for Jaden Schwartz. And I think that we might have normally seen that had Jared McCann not kind of been going through the tough time that he's going through right now, just with the scoring drought and everything, or at least at the time what he was going through. He has since scored. And I think that it was a really smart move by Lane to not just put Bobby McMann in a good position to succeed there, but also break up a line that was kind of struggling in that top line, right? Coming out of the Olympic break. They had been red hot going into the Olympic break. We remember the January that Matty Beniers and Jared McCann had. Oh my gosh, it's starting.
Yep, here we go.
They had this red hot January, kind of. They didn't totally cool off going into February, but February was definitely a cooler month, and the Olympic break killed a lot of that momentum. And so the breaking up those guys and kind of giving them fresh looks and spreading out some of the wealth throughout the lineup, having Jared McCann play on that second line, I think it was a great move from Coach Lane Lambert, and it definitely paid immediate dividends. The Kraken have won 2 games. All parties involved are scoring and putting up numbers, and that's certainly something that you want to see if you're a Kraken fan.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, we can talk about the really good things that Bobby McMahon's doing, what exactly he's bringing to the lineup, what he adds that the Kraken, maybe needed a little bit more of, and then also, ask the question too of, is this sustainable? Is he going to continue this 123 goal, 205 point pace for the Seattle Kraken? I mean, I think everyone knows the answer to that specific question is no, but how sustainable is this? I think we should start with the positives
Mm-hmm.
and look at the way that he's playing and the reason that he has put up this kind of production through the first 2 games. And Dylan, I know you had a lot of points on that. You're the X's and O's guy. You're the former scout. I'm really interested in your breakdown of what you've seen from Bobby McMann through 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing before you even get to like watching things on the ice is just that compared to what he was getting in Toronto and what he was doing in the positions he was put in Toronto, versus what he's getting here in Seattle, he's getting about 3.5 more minutes of ice time per game. So I think like that's the first like kind of indication that like, one, Seattle's going to be using him a lot and putting him in positions to succeed. He's also getting more power play ice time, and I think that that's a big one. We talked about this last week as far as what Bobby McMann could be bringing, and I said I think if he's able to get out there on the power play, should be useful. Should be able to get some power play one time as well, which he has been. And you look at the power play production with the Seattle Kraken already, 2 goals on the power play that matches what he had in Toronto through 60 games. He's already matched
Yeah.
his power play production there in the goals category. So I think that that's already just been a big thing, is that he gives them another legitimate shooting and scoring option on the power play, which I think helps out the power play a lot. I think that that's going to be a big thing for them moving forward. You don't have to just worry if you're a penalty kill unit about Jared McCann being that guy essentially on the power play, particularly because with this Kraken power play, as even though it's been a lot more successful this season than we've seen in years past, some of the guys on this team that are the normal producers have had a rough time on the power play. I'm mostly thinking of Jordan Eberle, who of course, was leading the team in goals, leading the team in points, only 4 power play goals though, because he kind of plays down low, not really always in a position to be able to shoot the puck or really even get the puck that much when he's on the power play, more of a setup guy on the power play. It had really been, Matty Beniers trying to dive in for certain situations, Chandler Stevenson trying to shoot from the left side boards, and then of course Jared McCann doing what he does on the power play. Having Bobby McMann out there, I think really just kind of gives the penalty kill a lot more that they have to think about. And because they've been kind of running Bobby McMann down the middle in that bumper spot a little bit, and certainly that's where he's kind of getting his goals from, I think that that's really going to force other teams' PK units to have to, play a little tighter in the defensive zone. They're not going to be able to spread out, get up to the point, or make sure that they can, have guys covering, say, Jordan Eberle if he's going to be on the net side player, right? I think they're going to have to be focused on the middle of the ice a little bit more. So Bobby McMahon's presence and what he's already done on the power play, I think is going to start paying dividends moving forward as teams start getting that tape and that film and they start paying attention to what the Kraken are doing with their new look power play. I think it's going to provide them a lot more opportunity to make passes and move the puck around, just because they're going to have to play a lot tighter on the penalty kill. But that's my special teams assessment.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you might be going to your,
yeah,
your,
no, I
your
can't.
5-on-5 assessment.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, as far as the special teams assessment too, like I think one of the things too is the Kraken, that's the use of the benefit of using the bumper slot and having somebody who's kind of active in that area. Now we've seen it on one unit a lot of the year to great success with like Matty Beniers, who kind of roves in from that spot and will just kind of dive in, pounce on rebounds and things like that. And so defenses or PKs, I mean, have to account for him. And just, you can't lose him. You absolutely cannot lose him because he's going to just dive in there at a rebound. Bobby McMann does it kind of a different way. But on that second unit, most of the year, they've kind of struggled just with having somebody that that as a PK you just need to watch out for and account for. They haven't really had that, and now they do. And I think PKs just haven't adjusted, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. On to just more general stuff. I mean, the big thing, and we talked about this when they traded for him and what the Kraken were getting in him, somebody who's just unafraid to shoot the puck. And you look at the 3 goals that he scored, particularly the 2 power play goals. If you just go back and you look at the video of those 2 power play goals, that's him just throwing the puck on net, right? Like that's him
Yeah.
going surveying the ice. You can tell, or at least in the one, the Vancouver one, he's surveying the ice. He's looking at what he's got, and he just goes, "Hey, best play, throw it on net." Goalie doesn't handle it well, you get a goal, right? Like
Yeah, I
it's
think that's honestly an understatement. You look at Tolopilo,
yeah,
and I mean, it just goes right into his pads, and he just kind of slides his entire body into his net past the goal line. It was kind of a funny looking play, but that's what happens when you throw the puck on net. Like
yeah.
you get bounces.
It is an extreme example, that goal, of the like good things happen if you just throw it on net, because you can't count on the goaltender essentially
To
giving you
shrivel back
the
into his own
biggest
net.
assist of all time. Yeah. To just fully retreat into the cave there like that. But you look at the second power play goal, and this is again from the bumper spot, middle of the ice, and it's just puck gets on his stick, first immediate reaction, let me throw it on net, right? And he's able to score there. And that's just something that the Kraken haven't had a lot of players do. They just don't think that way for whatever reason, right? I mean, we've seen it so many times. Player gets the puck on their stick. What do? They immediately pick their head up. They see if they have the shooting angle, where they want to shoot the puck, all that stuff. And that just takes up time. And it's not bad per se, but in today's NHL, where things are happening faster and faster, and particularly when you're talking about on the power play, giving the PK that half a second or whatever it ends up being, it might not even be a full half a second, where you're going to settle the puck down and pick your head up to see even where you want to shoot. Maybe you've already decided you're shooting, but you just want to see where it's going. It's just too much time. That gives somebody the ability to stand in front of that lane, get a shot block, or at the very least, it buys the goalie time to get set for it. Bob McMahon doesn't care about that. He just knows it's going on net, right? Like that's at some point you have to just send it and hope for the best, and that's what Bobby McMahon does, able to get that second goal. And so I think, again, the biggest thing that we were talking about with him was just going to be his ability to just take shots and throw pucks on net, and we're seeing that. We're seeing what can happen when you have a player like that on your team.
Yeah, and looking at that second power play goal too, as you watch the tape back, Bobby McMann, he's in a good position in the slot, throws the
Hmm.
puck on net, but he also has Shane Wright wide open,
Yeah.
right at the edge of the face-off circle for the one-timer, and that's like an easy tap-in type of goal. But you know what I could see happen? What we've seen happen plenty this season is when a player will have a pretty good chance, like a really good scoring opportunity, but they'll try and make that one extra pass to just get that perfect
Hmm.
tap in one. And at that point, anything can happen. You can miss the pass a little bit. It could be in Shane's feet. You could just hop up off the ice. So many different things could happen. Shane could just heel it or something, and it goes off the side of the net. Like there's lots of iffy parts to that where if McMahon decides to make the pass there, especially because his body's moving in a way where it's maybe hard to shift the momentum there, that play could be messed up. And so it's an example of that shoot first mentality. When he had every excuse to pass that puck,
Yep.
every reason to pass it, he chose to throw it on net.
Right, and he scores a great goal. Like it's a great looking goal. So I think that's the big thing. Just he is as advertised as somebody who wants to throw the puck on the net, and him getting the additional minutes, 3.5 more minutes a game, getting the more power play time than what he was getting in Toronto. I think that's going to help the Kraken a lot. Just kind of have more offense being generated. Whether he's always going to score, right? I mean, he's shooting at nearly 40% right now as a Seattle Kraken. That's not going to continue, right? Obviously, some of these are going to start becoming saves, but they're going to at least be shots. They're going to be forcing defenses back. It's going to be forcing saves made by a goaltender. Those create rebound opportunities, things like that. Defenses just have to respect the shot a little bit more rather than being able to just sit in those passing lanes. defenses didn't have to always respect that with the Seattle Kraken, right? Because they knew, hey, look, they want to pass it. They're not a shot volume focused team. And so I think having somebody out there, particularly on the first line of all lines as well, at least for the moment, is a big deal for them. The last thing with him that I noticed, and we can use this to kind of transition also, is just his speed, right? I know you talked about his speed last week. It's clear to me that the speed is very dynamic, and there's lots of things that you can do with his speed and what he's going to be able to bring to this team, but I don't think they're really utilizing it all yet, right? And I think it's been a good thing adding his speed element to that first line, because quite frankly, Jordan Eberle was maybe not strictly speaking your fastest player, but he was the player who played the fastest, the most north south on that top line. And while he's still not, he's not slow, he is 35, and he was never particularly a burner to begin with. Bobby McMann adding a speed element to a line with Jordan Eberle and Matty Beniers, I mean, that's just not how Jared McCann plays, right? And I think that that's something that the Kraken are already using a little bit. It's forcing defenses to have to handle that line a little bit differently, but I think there's still a lot of runway for the Kraken to potentially try to draw stuff up for Bobby McMann, especially in transition, because of the way they want to play defensively, move that puck up the ice quickly. I think once they kind of figure out how to work in his speed into the counterattack, we might really be able to see some things happen with Bobby McMann, breakaway opportunities, 2-on-1s, stuff like that we still haven't really seen a lot through the 2 games that he's played.
Yeah, and I mean, he's mostly used the speed to kind of keep up with those counterattack rushes. And I think the best example of it is probably his second goal against Vancouver, where he's able to kind of get up into the play really fast. And I could imagine if Jared McCann was there instead, I think he probably stays a little bit higher and looks for a shooting opportunity, or to make himself open for a shooting opportunity, maybe around the faceoff dot. Bobby McMann uses that speed, gets really fast, and kind of sneaks down low to the goal crease because he's already so far ahead of the play. That's kind of the natural place for him to go. But yeah, there's a lot more meat left on the bone there, I think, especially, even just by himself. All it takes is a turnover at the blue line and he could be gone.
Right. So I think that that's the big thing as far as like growth area with Bobby McMann, is still just we haven't seen the Kraken really game plan around his speed yet. And again, you've had him for 2 games and like a week, so you haven't exactly had time for that, but it's going to be interesting, and maybe it's something that if you re-sign him, it's something that you can work in more over the course of an off season and a full training camp. But I think that that's still the area that I look at and I go, okay, there's still some stuff here that Lane Lambert can do with him.
Yeah. And I think it might also work more or a little better on a different line to have that kind of approach, just because playing with Beniers and Eberle, again, it's not the fastest pair of line mates. Maybe you use the speed dynamic a little bit more once you switch the lines up a little bit.
Yeah, him with Chandler Stevenson being able to go up and
That'd
play
be the
together, odd man rush opportunities and stuff, that I could totally see paying dividends.
Yep. So as for, we got to ask the question, I'm sorry, of how sustainable this is. Yeah, look, 123 goal, 205 point pace isn't going to continue over a full season. But you asked the question, how sustainable is this? And I think the main, cause for, questioning this a little bit, or to pump the brakes a bit, is to maybe look at the Kraken's last 2 opponents in Vancouver and Florida. And look, I think McCann did a great job of going to the net, going to those areas what they call the hard areas, the tough areas to go to, right? Where you're going to score goals, putting pucks on net. That said, in the last couple games, they haven't really been the hard areas. They've been very easy to get to. If you look at just the plays around the slot in that Vancouver game and the Florida game, it's been incredibly easy to get there. And it's not going to be every game, depending on your opponent. Like tonight, it's not going to be easy to get there against the Tampa Bay Lightning team with Victor Hedman, defending those spots, and their whole blue line. Like, it's not easy. Can he replicate that when things get a little harder? Because I look at all of the goals he's scored so far for the Kraken and a couple of the assists too. And I think I would describe the defense on every single one of those plays as, beyond bad. I might even say horrendous defense. From the Canucks and Panthers on every single of these highlights that I'm looking at. How much of it is that? How much of it is doing the right things that's going to be carried forward?
Yeah, I think as with Most questions like this, the answer is somewhere in the middle, or it's both, right?
Yeah.
I think with Bobby McMann, look, one of the other things we talked about last week that I brought up was he's a great player off the puck. He's got a strong build. He likes to hit people. You look at him; he's averaging 3 hits per game right now with the Seattle Kraken. Kind of puts him roughly on like Ellie Tolvanen level pace as far as hits, which is a lot on this team for a forward. And so, he's one of the more physical players that the Kraken have. I think he is going to be capable of battling to those areas when the defense is going to make him work for it a little bit more than say Vancouver or Florida made him work for it. I think he's still going to be able to do that because that is just who he is as a player. And yes, he's had very nice matchups, we'll say, when it's come to that through these first 2 games in the Kraken sweater. Tonight will be more of a challenge, but I don't see why he can't do that when that's the kind of player he was in Toronto. It's really the player he's always been. So I think he has the strength, he's got the physicality, he doesn't shy away from contact at all. I think he's going to be able to do that once the competition gets a little bit fiercer. I think the one thing that you look at and from a sustainability standpoint is, you know, yes, he's throwing pucks on net right now and they're all going in. And that's not going to continue forever. And it's going to be probably at times pretty inconsistent too. That's just the way those kinds of players operate. They tend to be a little bit streaky. He's going to be no different. And right now he's riding, a hot streak. He's going to cool off at some point. That's the way that he has been in the past. I mean, I think about last year's run with Toronto, 13 games, no goals in the postseason for them. The run that they had, like he is capable of being streaky because when you are kind of just throwing everything on net, you're going to get lucky sometimes. Other times the defense and or goaltender is just doing their job and you don't score, right? That's the difference when you aren't taking your time to always perfectly pick your corner and see where your shot's going to go. You run the risk of just sending it right into the goalie's chest. And so that is something that obviously he's not going to be shooting at 37.5% the rest of the way. It's going to cool off. That being said, I am a big believer in, if you look at this, you look at the goals that he's scoring and you say, look, those look a little lucky to me. I would say that he's making his own luck to an extent by throwing those pucks on net. It does mean that, yes, he might go through some dry spells, but they won't last. Like, he will get back to scoring again, and it is still, I think, a net positive for the Kraken, particularly if they're able to start creating a little bit more rebounds, because playing with players like Jordan Eberle, Matty Beniers, those are players that can take advantage of that. And I think that would be solid. That would be one thing I would be more worried about if he was on the second line with, say, like a Chandler Stevenson. Chandler Stevenson, I don't always think of as being like a guy who pounces on rebounds. I would think of it being more the speed-based dynamic, that pairing between those two. Him playing with Matty Beniers, if he just starts throwing pucks on net and there's rebounds to be had, Matty Beniers will find them.
Yeah, and that's an element that Matty Beniers added to his game this season too. You couldn't say that a year ago, but now, I mean, it's pretty reliable. And yeah, I wouldn't even say lucky for him. It's just he's taking what the other team's giving him, and right now, these last couple games, they've given him an awful lot, and that can't fault him for that. Like, that's what you want to do. You want to have that killer instinct. So no, I love what I've seen from Bobby McMann so far. I mean, do you have any thoughts about it? It's super early, but like, my mind has gone to like, okay, do you extend him? What does the price look like? That sort of thing. Like, I do wonder about, what Jason Bottrell must be thinking. Again, he's not going to make a decision anytime soon on that. But, if this kind of production keeps up too, how much does that number go up for Bobby McMann, given he is a free agent? This is a contract year for him.
Yeah, I mean, I have to assume that they were always thinking about extending him when they traded for him. I know they didn't trade, say, such a large package for him that had to be the expectation. He could just be a rental given what they gave up for him, but I have to assume they were always considering it. I think seeing the team fit, seeing that he could play with Matty Beniers, thinking that he could already play with Chandler Stevenson helps, that you can think of multiple places to put him in your lineup and the different things that he brings. I think that, look, he brings the physical element. He brings more of a speed element. He gives you a guy who's unafraid to throw the puck on net, something that your team has sorely missed. And look, if you look at his season total production since, with the three goals that he has with the Seattle Kraken, he's got 22 on the year. That's tied with Jordan Eberle for the most goals that anybody on this team has, right? Like, you have to be considering extending him. He's one of the few goal scorers that you have on the team. And I think the size and the speed just kind of make it more of a complete package. At the end of the day, is he, in on a perfect roster, more of a middle six guy? Yes, he is. And I know there's the stigma of this team having way too many of those guys. It's true. I just think that he is more versatile, and the things that he does provide more value than, say, some of the other guys on this team, and certainly the options that you're going to have come free agency. So I would think that they're looking to re-sign him, and if I was the front office, I would be looking to do so as well.
Right. Well, if you're looking at it from a GM's perspective, the way I'm trying to think about it, if I'm Bottrell, is yes, you have a lot of middle six forwards, but basically, is Bobby McMann a better fit for your team and what you're building than Jaden Schwartz or Ellie Tolvanen?
Right.
Because I think you really ideally only want to keep one of those three, and you kind of have to pick which one it is. And so far, to me, McMann is leading that race.
Yeah. And the one thing you can definitively offer Bobby McMann is, certainly right now, if you were to start having that conversation with him, and I don't know that they are, it's very possible they wait for the off season, right? Most players want to do that.
I think they probably will.
Yeah. Look, we've given you close to 19 minutes a night. Where else are you going to go and get that?
Yeah, that's a lot of opportunity.
Right? Like, there's a very real chance that when you look at season goal totals, Bobby McMann ends up leading this team in goals. Right? And I think, that's something that you can point to and say to him, and look, in a contract negotiation, look, if you're going to lead our team in goals, we're going to be giving you playing time. And that's just something that, he's probably not going to find a ton of on the open market if he wants to go to a good team.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, he's the kind of player that you look at and you're like, this guy should be a matchup nightmare third liner on a Stanley Cup contender, which he could be. But if he is that, you're only playing 13 to 14 minutes a night, and this might be more fun.
Yeah, I would think so. I'd hope so anyway. So yeah, that's those are my thoughts on Bobby McMann.
Yeah, I think we just about covered it. So welcome to Seattle, Bobby McMann. It took a while, but I think it was worth the wait.
I would say so. I would say so. All right. So transitioning over to how the Kraken have played as a whole, RJ. Obviously, they went through their 4-game losing streak. They've had that really tough loss against Colorado. Team just did not look very good. Lane Lambert said after the game that it was mind-boggling that how kind of poor that they played. They got, day off, get to go up to Vancouver, reset. Vancouver right now, the ultimate get right team. Kraken are able to do that in that one, win 5-2, come back down to Seattle, beat Florida 6-2. I know it's not, necessarily the same Florida that has won the Stanley Cup these last 2 years, but
Not
still, they had some names on that roster. Kraken able to win that one pretty handily. It's the classic back and forth that this team does, RJ. The cycle continues of losing, looking really bad, having real no answers for why the team is just as bad as they are and playing as poorly as they are, and then they just figure it out and you move forward and you start winning games, and we'll see how long that trend continues before the cycle starts over again.
Yeah, I mean that's basically where we're at. The question: are they good? Are they bad? It definitely felt like it hit another low point after that Colorado game, and you have Lane Lambert, really, I think for the second major time this season, at least with talking to us, just seeming to be completely baffled by why his team is the way it is, and kind of learning what we've learned the last 3 years about what this group is and how they are. But as has happened multiple times this season, it feels like the schedule does come to the rescue. Like you said, Vancouver's the ultimate get right opponent. You have a couple games that if you just play, you don't have to play perfect. If you just don't give it away, you're going to win the game. You collect a very valuable 4 points, because you look at the standings too. And I think that's an important place to look, given that, you're in the thick of the playoff race here. The Kraken clinging on to the final playoff spot in a tie with LA with 71 points, but the Kraken have the tiebreaker for that final wild card spot. And so, as Lane Lambert said a couple games prior, basically we've been caught, but we haven't been surpassed.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't been overtaken, and that's kind of where the Kraken are at right now. And so it's going to be an all-out battle for that final playoff spot, or again, potentially with how bad the Pacific is, they could still win the Pacific. Like, it's crazy. But for all of those spots, it's going to come down to the wire. And so it's going to depend on how well the Kraken play basically from here on out. Throw everything that's happened already, throw it away, because everybody else has done pretty similarly. What's it going to look like going forward? And
right.
So go ahead.
Oh, no. Sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
It is one of those. And I think that you and I both have different thoughts as to, kind of what causes the cycle and what they're doing. And we'll talk about them both here. But real quick, one of the things that I do want to touch on before we kind of get to what both of us think is going on here. You mentioned the tiebreaker, and I do want to just mention this for everybody. The Kraken are tied with the Oilers for having the tiebreaker against all of the teams involved in the Pacific, right? When it comes to the regulation wins number at 25. And if you pull up the NHL standings page, it's the RW, that's the tiebreaker. And Kraken have 25, Edmonton has 25, Vegas at 23, Anaheim at 22, San Jose at 20, and the Kings at 18, which is ridiculously low for a team in this conversation. And so that's something to keep in mind, because, look, the Kraken were caught and surpassed briefly for a couple days there, right? San Jose had passed them, LA passed them for that final playoff spot, but it is something to consider going down the stretch here. Kraken probably going to have the tiebreaker in just about any scenario that they end up in. And that's going to be a big deal for them. And so don't just look at the points and the games remaining and all of that kind of stuff. Also pay attention to that tiebreaker number, because it is something that's going to help the Kraken out a lot.
Yeah, definitely worth mentioning for sure. The Kraken should have the tiebreaker on just about anybody, and so if that points figure is even, the Kraken should have it. So that's a very good point there. Yeah, and then as far as I guess just what's going on, I think we're more or less in agreement here. The questions: are they good? Are they bad? Are they just super streaky? I think the Kraken, you look at their record, especially against the top teams of the top half of the league and the teams of the bottom half of the league, like the one thing that they've been really consistently good at, and what has been their saving grace, and the reason they're in this position, is they're good at taking care of business against teams they should beat. We've mentioned it many, many times on this podcast. They have one of the worst records against the top half of the league, one of the best records in the league against the bottom half of the league. And where it got to be a problem post-Olympic break is they were no longer able to take care of those games against some of the worst teams in the league. You look at those couple games against St. Louis, the game against Nashville, those are the teams they were reliably able to beat that they all of a sudden weren't. But now they're back to being able to do it. And I think that's ultimately what it's going to come down to. Like, it's not super interesting as far as like looking at X's and O's and strategy and everything. It's basically just, can you beat the bad teams? And can you beat more of them than the other teams around you who also were just struggling across the board? And so that's why I wanted to go in and look at and see the remaining schedule for the Kraken, kind of how it maps out. We've got less than a month left in the regular season. Regular season ends April 16th. To go take a look at and see how it kind of maps out for the Kraken, and then also for all of the teams around them. And so I made this chart here. I'm going to put it up on the YouTube version. I'm also going to post it like on the Discord and stuff. And here we go. So it should be up on the YouTube version for everybody now. And this is, I want to give all credit here to Damian Echeveretta, who was, I don't know if he's still a league employee, if he still works for the league, but I know a few years ago, at least, he did. And he used to make these for each conference every year around the playoff push time. He stopped a few years ago, so I just decided to steal the format and make it myself. But let's give a quick primer on what this is. So you can see all of the teams in the West. I've omitted every team after St. Louis because they're basically out of it, the Calgary, Vancouver, and the like. But you can see the playoff picture here, the three central teams, because the Central's going to have the top spot points wise. I then put Pacific second because they're going to be number 2, and then the 2 wild card teams as you're going left to right there, and then all the teams in the hunt still. And of course, it's sorted by points that you have on the bottom there. So you've got a lot of information in this. Like here's basically how to look through it. You've got points at the bottom here, and that's going to be in bold. Below that, you have the tiebreaker. RW regulation wins. You can see the Kraken with 25, as Dylan just mentioned. You have games left, which is just number of games remaining, and then it's broken down into home and road games remaining. And so I think that's going to be interesting to look at as well. You have the tragic number, which is the number of points that basically have to go against a team before they're eliminated. And so you can see the teams that are outside of playoff position. Still a lot of points to go. Nobody's really close to being mathematically eliminated yet. Even the Canucks are not mathematically eliminated yet. And then you look above at the remaining schedules. And so it's easy to see, at or versus a team. And then teams in red are playoff teams on that remaining schedule. And so if you see, let's say you look at Edmonton, there's a lot of red left on that schedule. They face a lot of playoff teams the rest of the way. And then you look at maybe on the other end, San Jose, there's not a whole lot of red there. So they face a lot of non-playoff teams going forward. So looking at this, we can kind of get a sense of what the remaining schedule looks like and what the dynamic looks like for not just the Kraken, but a lot of other teams in the hunt. And going through and making this yesterday, I did notice some interesting trends, some interesting things to look at the rest of the way that might hint at what the final standings end up looking like. But I'll give you a chance to get some words in here, Dylan, and see, is there anything that stands out to you here? Thoughts on this? Have I gone too far with my Excel spreadsheets? What are your thoughts?
No, I think it's a great graphic. Thank you for making it. And no, I think it does produce some interesting things to look at, particularly when you look at the schedule for the Kraken versus other teams. I mean, the immediate thing that stands out for me for the Kraken is just that of their 16 remaining games, 10 of them are on the road. So that's something that the Kraken are going to have to, deal with, is that they're going to have to be playing away from Climate Pledge Arena. They do have a slightly better home record than away record, so that could come into play a little bit. Just 14, 13, and 4 on the road this year. So basically 500 on the road. So it'll be interesting to see if that comes into play for the Kraken down the stretch. Otherwise, the two things you mentioned, right? Edmonton's got a ton of games left against playoff teams. San Jose doesn't. And so when you look at the two teams that are, LA is technically closer to the Kraken given that they're tied in points, but they just seem so illegitimate to me that I'm going to ignore them. When you look at the two teams that are kind of sandwiching the Kraken in San Jose and Edmonton, it's great news on the Edmonton front because their schedule is going to be really difficult. But on the San Jose front, San Jose's already got a game in hand on the Kraken, and then they have a really nice schedule. 3 games against Nashville. They got games against St. Louis in there, get Chicago in there twice. It's a really good schedule for the Sharks. So the Kraken aren't going to be able to necessarily just go 500 down the stretch because I got to think the Sharks will be able to do better than that.
Yeah, you'd have to think so. Well, here's the interesting thing with the Sharks. We kind of start with I guess let's look at the Kraken schedule first real quick, just because, it is pretty road heavy, and it is the most road heavy schedule on here, tied with the Winnipeg Jets, but a lot of these other teams around them, whether you're talking about, Anaheim, Vegas, Edmonton, Utah, LA, San Jose, you go down the list, they all have more home games remaining than road games. And so the Kraken are the different team there in the fact that they have a lot of road games left, which shouldn't surprise us given that they've played 7 of their last 8 at home.
Yeah.
The Kraken getting a long homestand done with. So that is a big difference in their schedule. As far as playoff versus non-playoff teams, it's kind of in the middle as far as quality of competition. I think you also look at a couple quirks here, including Colorado, which would be their toughest remaining game, of course, top team in the league. That is on the final day of the season, April 16th, and it's going to be pretty unlikely that game will matter in the standings at all for Colorado. They will almost certainly have the President's Trophy locked up by that point, and which might mean that they rest a lot of their players. That might not be the traditional game against Colorado that you would expect. So the Kraken getting some breaks there as far as their schedule. But you look at the other teams around them, and I think we can start with San Jose, because they just I think they probably have. Uh, so according to Tankathon and like just strength of schedule based on win percentage of opponent, they have the fourth easiest schedule. But looking at this, it might end up being the easiest just because you have so few playoff teams that they actually have to face, and a lot of it is it's only going to get like easier after these next two games because they only have 5 games against playoff teams remaining all season, and 2 of them are their next two against Edmonton and Buffalo. Once you get those out of the way, there should be a lot of easier opponents. The reason I don't think it'll matter as much with San Jose, though, is I've watched a lot of Sharks hockey this season. I've tried to watch a lot of the teams around the Kraken, and I can stomach them a lot more than, say, LA, who I don't know, can't bear to watch. It's such boring hockey. So I've watched a lot of the Sharks because they're really fun. They do sometimes struggle with bad teams. Like that's the thing, they can beat anybody and they'll have big wins against good teams. I mean, like they've just played some really good ones against Montreal, one of the better teams in the league, but you can't necessarily count on them to take care of bad opponents in the way that Seattle can. And I think that's where the Kraken might have the edge on San Jose. Both the Kraken and the Sharks are going to play a lot of bad teams. I trust the Kraken to take care of the bad teams more than I trust San Jose.
I would agree with that. I would totally agree with that. I think the Kraken have certainly shown that they're more consistent there, which is an insane thing to say. Kraken and consistent, that those two words don't belong together. But they definitely have proven to be more consistent when it comes to taking on those teams. And I guess I look at things on both ends. I look at San Jose, the next 2 games, Edmonton, Buffalo, those are tough. But then really outside of that Buffalo game, all their remaining playoff opponents are Pacific Division opponents. So like, yes, they're playoff teams, but they're not good playoff teams. And I look at Edmonton's schedule and I think the same thing, right? Almost all of the red on Edmonton's schedule is either a Pacific Division team or Utah, right? Which might as well be a Pacific Division team based on how many points they have and the way that they're playing. The Kraken are the one team that has they do have that Colorado game, although it might not really be a Colorado game. But then they also have Minnesota, they have Buffalo, and they have Tampa twice. And so that's the other thing that if I'm a Kraken fan and I'm looking at this with my Doomer hat on, I look at that and I go, the Kraken schedule has a lot of playoff opponents, and they're more legitimate playoff opponents than maybe San Jose's or Edmonton's are. Despite the fact that whole lineup looks red for Edmonton, a lot of it is like Anaheim, Seattle, Vegas.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point where the Kraken, don't face the teams kind of around them in the standings as much as some of these other teams. And really, I think it's going to come down to also their ability at this point to beat not just the bad teams, but the mid teams.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Nashville. I mean, I would put Nashville in the bad category, but points wise, they're in the mid category. But you look at Columbus, you look at Winnipeg, you look at, even Vegas, some of these top teams, you get Vegas twice. Like you're going to have to beat some of those teams, Edmonton, you're going to have to beat some of those teams. Actually, now I'm looking at, they do face some of the teams around them a lot. Edmonton, Utah, LA, Vegas twice, you're getting some of those teams. But you're going to have to beat them. They're not going to be a whole lot of like really, really bad teams. I think like Florida and Chicago,
Nashville.
That's about it. Nashville, that's about it. Those are kind of the 3 games you have left. So I think one thing it does tell me is the Kraken are going to have to raise the level of their game. Like I think if they play the way that they did against Vancouver and Florida, again, like it was more than enough to get the job done. I don't know that it's going to be enough to get the job done against like mid-level teams. I think they're going to have to find that next level, which they have done all season. Like they've used those easy games to find their game again and get into a rhythm. Like I'm not saying they can't do it, but that's one of the things they're going to have to do. Looking around, I mean, Edmonton is really interesting, and they're the team that I could see, maybe more than any other that has the real potential to fall out of this thing and fall out of the race, even though they look pretty secure there in the 3 spot in the Pacific. And the reason for that is they face so many teams around them in the standings. If they don't take care of things head to head, you've got, I'm just going to go San Jose, Utah, Vegas, Anaheim, Seattle, Vegas, Utah, San Jose, LA. Like those are all teams very close to them in the standings. They've got a lot of games against those teams. if the Oilers continue to have their skid, if they can't figure it out how they're going to play better, like they could really drop out of this, because you have a lot of games that are just 4-point swings for them the whole rest of the way. And also with the news that Leon Draisaitl is going to be out for, I mean, I don't know how long, but he's going to miss at least their next game. That could be a real problem for Edmonton. Like, of all the teams that I could see just kind of bottoming out here, it's them.
Yes, they have the easiest path to find themselves on the outside, for sure, because of those 4-point swings. I guess from a Kraken fan perspective, if I take off the doomer hat and I put on the optimistic hat, I look at that and I go,
oh man,
these
sorry,
are...
breaking news, Dylan. I'm sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
you. Breaking news, like just released. Leon Draisaitl is going to be out for the remainder of the regular season. The
Okay.
Oilers just announced.
So yeah, that is big.
I swear I said that before I saw the news. But yeah, Oilers are in big trouble now.
Yes, so that's big for the Oilers. What I was gonna say, like what makes, you know, if I'm looking at it optimistically for the Kraken, I look at that and I go, even if the Oilers don't lose all those, right? Those 4-point swings don't all happen against them. The fact that the Oilers and the Sharks have to play so much in division, Vegas has to play a lot in division, means that if any of these games start getting split, that opens the door for the Kraken to at the very least secure the playoffs, the wild card spot, because that means these divisional opponents have to be losing games in there, right? Like if they all split against each other, it means they're not really going to be banking a ton of points, and that's where the Kraken schedule being less division heavy opens the door for them, where if they are able to elevate their play a little bit, take care of business when they have to, find ways to win the games that are going to be closer, the Kraken then all of a sudden are in a good spot, because the division might just beat up on itself enough that it opens up the avenue for the Kraken to really climb.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's where, especially this stretch here where you're facing non-division teams, like these next 6 games for Seattle are going to be huge. And if you can go on a bit of a run there, you're going to set yourself apart, where opponents, your other teams that you're competing with here, a lot of them are going to play each other. And so there's just, it means there's some points are going to be on the table. It means, that the floor is tougher, but the ceiling is a little bit easier, and then you can really gain some ground. I mean, looking at some other teams here, I mean, there's not too much. Anaheim's schedule looks, easy enough, and also they're 6 points up on the Kraken. It's certainly something where the Kraken could catch them. They have a game in hand. I feel like it's going to be tough for Anaheim to fall down that far. I think they're probably going to be all right. I mean, Vegas, kind of middle of the road schedule. It's going to be a lot of them. Just can they figure their own game out? And here, I'll take the charts on some people. It's been a while since we've been on here with our faces on the podcast. But the other team that I find, I find them the least interesting of all of these teams if I have to watch them. But the schedule is the most interesting, and that is LA.
Yeah.
Currently tied with the Kraken right now at 71 points. Kraken have 1 game in hand on them and the tiebreaker. But you look at LA, and certainly by strength of schedule, just by opponent record, they have the easiest schedule left in the league by far. It's remarkable. And one of the big things that's driving that is they have 3 games left against the last place Vancouver Canucks. Kraken fans should know just how bad Vancouver is. They saw them on Saturday. If that's potentially 3 free wins if LA can avoid messing it up. Now, all season they have not been able to avoid messing things up. So I don't even trust them to take care of any of this. LA doesn't scare me at all. But the schedule is so easy, you do have to wonder. 3 games against Vancouver. They still have Toronto left. You've got a couple games against Calgary left. There's not a whole lot that looks good on this schedule. And also, they do have Seattle April 13th toward the end of the season. So if it's close,
big game,
you do have that head-to-head game. That could be a big game if those teams are within, say, 2 or 3 points of each other.
Yeah. How many home games do the Kings have left?
The Kings have 9 home games and 6 road games. So it's pretty home heavy. But here's the thing. I know what you're about to say.
Kings are terrible at home. Only 2 teams in the Pacific Division, the entirety of the Pacific Division, have losing records at home, and that's the Los Angeles Kings and the Vancouver Canucks. And so that was the one thing I looked at with LA was, 1, I don't know how legitimate they are to begin with, and 2, they got a ton of games at home left, and they're terrible at home. Like I don't
So the
know.
one team where that looks like a big disadvantage.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. There's enough there that I still just haven't they don't seem like the threat the way that San Jose not really going away and their schedule looks to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just they are completely uninspiring to me. They fired their coach too late. I've talked about it plenty,
Yeah.
especially on our Red Glare podcast. But LA doesn't worry me. But the schedule on paper is so easy that maybe they're worth looking at. As far as the three Central Division long shots in Nashville, Winnipeg, and St. Louis, I was curious to see if any of their schedule or their outlook looked like something potentially worrying. Uh, it's a no to me. I'm not really worried. I mean, Nashville is most interesting to me because you look at their schedule against the teams that they're trying to catch, and it's very heavy there. Seattle, Vegas, San Jose, LA, San Jose, LA, Anaheim, Utah, San Jose, Anaheim. Like so many of their remaining games. I don't know how many I just listed there, but it feels like 10 of the 16 or something are against teams that are right near them that they're going to try and catch. So they have a lot of control over their own destiny. That said, they are a bad team. They will mess it up. They will not win these games. They don't worry me in the slightest.
Yeah, what you have to do if you're a Kraken fan and you're looking at that is because if they win all those games, Nashville's a problem, right? Like that's huge. They gain a ton of
Yeah.
ground, and if they lose those games, that's a problem because vast majority of them are against
Yeah.
other teams that you're trying to deal with. So if you're the Seattle Kraken, again, anytime these teams are playing each other, you have to hope that one, the games end in regulation because you don't want 3-point games. That's bad, but you have
Yeah.
to hope that they all split, right? Like, anytime Nashville plays a game, 2 games against LA, you have to hope that each of those teams wins one of those games. You don't want either side of that winning both of them, right? Like that's the bad scenario. So again, if you're a Kraken fan and you're looking at all the schedules because all these teams have to play each other so much, you have to hope that they all kind of go 500 because that's the best path and avenue for the Kraken is the Kraken can play the non-divisional teams, try to win as many games of those as they can, certainly win the divisional games that they can and the conference games that they can. But if the Kraken can just go and not have to be involved in these big 4-point swing games and everybody else has to, and those games all end up kind of split evenly, that's a big window that opens up for the Kraken to slide through.
Yeah, no, well said. I think you're rooting for basically a lot of splits, and you could even just look at whichever team is down a little further. Maybe root for that team. And as far as Winnipeg and St. Louis, they're interesting to me because Winnipeg is probably the team around here that's playing the best right now. They've been on a little bit of a heater recently. The problem is if they're trying to claw back into it, is just like the Kraken. They've got 6 home games, 10 road games. It's tough from that perspective, and they face a lot of playoff teams the rest of the way. So they're playing the best, but they have the toughest schedule going forward. So that should neutralize them. St. Louis also playing pretty well. They've got a little bit easier of a schedule, but they're the furthest back. I think they're 7 points back. It's probably not going to happen for them either. So really, you're just looking at San Jose, LA, and then the rest of the Pacific teams. I think this is kind of a Pacific Division race and competition here.
I agree. Now, where I disagree with you a little bit, RK,
Okay.
is maybe to an extent the importance of the schedule for the Kraken. Right? Is that I agree with you. Kraken have done a good job of kind of playing to the schedule. They lose the games against the really good teams. They win the games against the bad teams. So that's kind of how this year's team has been. But as far as the schedule being the thing that matters the most for the Kraken, when the Kraken are specifically looking at the games that they have to play, is I don't think it's so much gut check time as, insofar as we got to get up and we have to play these mid teams strong. Obviously that's important, but I think it's really just gut check time in terms of, are we just going to be focused tonight? Because I think that's really more so what the problem has been this year for the team. And this is what I think the ultimate explanation is for the cyclical play that the Kraken have had this year. When I was really thinking about what changed or what happened, through the Colorado game, Lane Lambert's presser afterwards to us, going into Vancouver, going into the Florida game. And I realized that The issue with the Kraken has been this, and this is what their normal cycle's been. They're going back and forth. It goes through moments where the guys slip and they don't play with attention and focus, and the defensive breakdowns happen, and the system's not being followed, and the system is designed to elevate their play and get them and keep them in games that they probably otherwise shouldn't be in, right? And so when that attention and focus isn't there, they lose. And then the losing spirals, as it always has with this group of players. And the difference this year, as we've talked about many times, has been Lane Lambert. That is the common denominator when you're comparing this year's squad versus the last two, has been the coach is different, and he has done an amazing job at rallying them, pulling them together, getting on them, however it is that he does it behind closed doors. He gets them to all of a sudden come back around and start playing focused and attentively, and they can fit to their system again, and then they start winning games. And then they win a bunch of games in a short amount of time, and they grow complacent, and the focus gets lost, and the attention to detail gets lost, and the cycle starts over. But that's essentially all that's been happening all season long with this team. And it isn't always, it's lined up pretty well with the schedule, but I think it more so has to just do with Lane Lambert's a really smart coach. He's installed a very good system, but it's a system that demands focus and attention. And this is a group that has been really bad for over multiple years now at giving focus and attention over long stretches of time. And in the past, when they've lost it, that's just been it. They have not had somebody who can get it back for them. Lane Lambert and the magic that he's worked this year has just been getting on them to the point where he gets them re-engaged and they refocus and they repay attention to those details. He's done it again. It's just a matter of how long does this last? When do they lose focus again? How much time is then left in the schedule around that, right? Like, it's going to be interesting to see how long this like kind of good stretch lasts for the Kraken, where they are paying attention, where they are focused, where they are going to be able to compete with anybody on a nightly basis because that system is working. How long does that last? When does the other side flip and the attention to detail gets lost and the focus gets lost? They're going to start losing again. And then if that is the case, is there then time before the end of the year to turn it around? Or do you find yourself then, losing focus and attention right out of a playoff spot? Or potentially even worse, you do make the playoffs, but you hit the bad part of the cycle for the playoffs and you just get swept, or you lose in 5 because you're really going to need that focus and that bit of attention there. And so to me, that seems like what the clear cycle is. It's this group of players, as they have in years past, having a really hard time staying focused and having that attention to detail. And Lane Lambert has been the one guy that could kind of drag them back to it, but it can't stay for whatever reason. They're just not able to stay in that zone long enough to just, being first in the Pacific, which is what they could be this year if they were focused all year.
Oh, definitely. And that's the thing. I partially agree with you. And you said that's kind of where we disagree. Like, I tend to focus on the external factors. You tend to focus on the internal factors. And I agree with you on a lot of the internal factors in that cycle. What I would add to that from the external side is that when they have needed to pull themselves out of that slump, when they have needed to refocus, the schedule has dictated that there will be very little resistance to that. Like, the schedule has refused over and over again to kind of deliver them a knockout blue as far as an opponent. When the Kraken needed to pull themselves out of this recent slump, they had basically 2 free wins to do it. They took care of it. They did it themselves, but the schedule helped them with that. And also the fact that I think, you look at so many times this season when they've had those slumps in any normal year, it would have put them so far out of the playoff conversation and playoff picture based on the rest of the teams that it's probably harder to regain that momentum, regain that focus, because like you can't look around the room and be like, hey, we're still in it, guys. We're still in it. Any other season would have been kind of merciless from that perspective, and you'd just be out of it and you would know it. It's harder to regain your focus when that's the case. But I think it's interesting, combining those two things and looking at the remainder of the schedule for the Kraken. And I think you can, maybe even try and predict a little bit where these, what this cycle is going to be and where it's going to come. Because look, the game tonight against Tampa is going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough.
You could play
but
focused and lose that one close. Like that happens.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can play focused and still lose that one close. And I think you can kind of keep the focus, keep the momentum going because you have 3 fairly easy games right after that. You start your road trip, they're on the road, but you got Nashville, Columbus, and Florida. Those should all be winnable games. And so I could see because the upside of the cycle happening here where, I mean, who knows, maybe even losing overtime against Tampa. If you could take a point from that, that's a win for you.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you go into Nashville, Columbus, and Florida. I could see those 3 easily being wins. Then you go into, now you've potentially got points in 6 games in a row, and you got Tampa on the road, which is tough. Buffalo on the road, which is tough. Edmonton on the road, which is tough. And then you could see maybe the downside of it start to happen a little bit. And I think like the key swing game here is like the next one against Utah, because that could go either way. Like that's a team that's right on par with how good you are. And can you get the 2 points there before? And hey, if you do drop the game against Utah, boom, you get your free win against Chicago. And that's what kind of help you pull you out of that slump. You get Winnipeg, should be on the easier side. Then it goes to Minnesota and Vegas. That's tougher. But Vegas, who knows? Like, Vegas is iffy. If you can kind of keep that good momentum going from Chicago and Winnipeg, survive the Minnesota game, then you got Vegas, you got Calgary, you got LA, and then Vegas again. Like all of those, this lines up to finish on the upswing, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like those are all very winnable games. In the Colorado game, you're probably not even facing Colorado as a real team.
Right. No, it's entirely
this is lining up for the cycle to go right.
Yeah, no, it's entirely possible. And I agree, three games into the road trip would also make sense, just because at that point you've been on the road for a while, right? And it just lines up as you have to then face Tampa, Buffalo, Edmonton, right, for things to start going wrong for you. So yeah, it's true. Like again, it's a combination of both factors. But yeah, it is kind of crazy how this has just kind of worked for them all year long, schedule wise or internally, right? Like it's just, this is the way this team rolls.
And to this point, it's all kind of gone right, like in the big picture. And I have no reason to believe that'll stop. Like, why would it go right for this long and not continue to just work out?
Right. Why not just finish off the season? Like it would be weird for it to all.
Why have the season finish
wrong.
off different than it's been, through 60 whatever games they played.
Right. No, I agree. Anything else from you before we close out the podcast?
Just want to say I'll be posting this the chart here or whatever, and I'm going to keep updating it too. So people can keep an eye out for that. I'll stay on top of it and update it. So if you want to see where the Kraken are at and what their remaining schedule looks like.
Awesome. Sounds good. That's going to do it for this episode of The Deep Dive. I want to thank one more time our wonderful sponsor, the law offices of Rico Tessendor, for sponsoring the podcast, as they always do. Again, going to be there for you regardless of what life throws at you, including random March snow here in Seattle. And while we hope none of you ever need his services, the odds say that at some point someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you call Rico at 425-778-9800 or visit his website, ricotessendor.com, to schedule a free consultation. He's won millions of dollars for his clients and helped thousands of people in the greater Seattle area. And as a fellow member of the ECH community, we know he'll help you too. Look forward to seeing as many of you as possible at Queen Anne Beer Hall on Thursday for that game against Nashville. Until then, see y'all next time.
Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey, especially our Terror of the Deep patrons.
Thank you so much for making all this possible. We really appreciate your support.